You're the guy people call when they need a helping hand, moving furniture, unloading a truck. But lately, your shoulder's been acting up, and you're the one who's calling for help. And that's the moment you realize you can no longer shoulder the load.
The Joint and Spine Center is Cincinnati's leading destination for orthopedic care, with a range of surgical and non-surgical treatments. So when a moment has the power to change the rest of your life, go to the one place with the power to change it for the better, the Christ Hospital Health Network. This changes everything.
The Pound This Podcast is brought to you by the Christ Hospital Health Network. This is the Pound This Podcast, episode 678, Eating Disorders and Enneagrams with Emily Robinson.
I want to lose weight, but I don't know how to get started.
What should I meal prep every week?
How do I get those sweet booty gains?
Inspiration for your healthy lifestyle. The Pound This Podcast with Amanda Valentine.
Hey friends, welcome to the Pound This Podcast. I am your host, Amanda Valentine, and I have been obese for most of my life. I'm going to say about 6 years old or so. Spent well over a decade yo-yo dieting. And then about 10 years ago, I made a New Year's resolution to stop dieting and start making the best decision possible in every moment. And from then, my entire life has changed. I've lost over 100 pounds. I started this podcast at the beginning of 2018 to help other people on their weight loss journeys or their journeys to become healthier people. And I have quit my full-time 9-to-5 job, become a certified personal trainer, a certified nutrition coach, and I want to do everything in my power with my own personal journey to help you on yours. So if you're listening to this podcast and you find any value in any episode you listen to, please, please, please share the love, share with family, friends, anyone you think that could find some benefit from this podcast. And you can always reach out to me with any questions or comments. You can email me at amanda@amandavалентиnebites.com. It's my goal to give you the best information possible for your journey and let you know that you're not alone. I appreciate you listening so much, and I would really appreciate you also sharing the love with this small business entrepreneur as I try to make my life's mission helping other people live their best lives. So here we go. Thank you so much for listening to the Pound This Podcast. I'm Amanda Valentine. Very excited about my guest today, Emily Robinson. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, yeah. I'm so excited you're here because you have such a wealth of knowledge behind you. I mean, you're sitting in front of an Enneagram test that I took that you're going to analyze here in a minute. Yes. But you're also do yoga therapy and health coaching, and what else? Am I missing anything else?
No, that is those are the two main ones: is the health coaching and the yoga therapy. And I own my own health coaching and yoga therapy business called Abide Health Coaching and Yoga Therapy, and I work in partnership with Anchor Wellness and Kenwood. And so, like you said, I know we're going to get into the Enneagram, and that's just part of one of the things that I do in my health coaching practice is to kind of use that as a baseline for people to help them gain better knowledge about themselves and a better self-understanding and self-awareness. So that's part of what I do. But yeah, so thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to be here.
So tell me some backstory of like how you decided to become a health coach. Like where did that begin to where you are now?
Yeah. Oh, great question. So I started just with regular yoga, RYT 200, and I got very into yoga. I think I started practicing back in probably right out of college, like 2009, I got very into just practicing for myself. And then to get real personal, real quick, I actually developed an eating disorder during that time. And then as a part of the treatment center that I went to, they used yoga as part of the therapy process for that. And so I just was reintroduced to yoga in a much calmer, I think, way than I had been experiencing it before. Because prior to that, I was really using it in hot yoga studios. Not that there's anything wrong with hot yoga, but using it to, burn calories and as a way of just purely exercising my body, not really using it as more like a mindfulness tool. So it made me really rethink that. And especially just having been through that experience of eating disorders, and that's such a prevalent thing, unfortunately, for so many women, and men even nowadays. And so as things kind of progressed, I started, like I said, at a RYT 200 and then began getting other certifications. I went and got my pre and postnatal yoga certification to help mamas. I'm a mom too, so that was nice to have that kind of in my back pocket. And then also got a trauma sensitive certification for yoga as well.
Oh,
and
wow.
then,
Explain that to me.
so it's a lot of that is just a lot about the language that you use in a class and really creating a very safe environment because you don't know where people are coming from. And although I think some studios do this very, very well, other studios may, I think, underestimate the levels of trauma that a lot of people have faced. And so lots of people are not going to feel comfortable walking into a regular yoga studio because there might be an instructor, that comes up and touches them. And it may not be inappropriate touching in any way, but just, you're not expecting it. Or if there's any kind of, again, if maybe this person has had, physical or sexual assault in their background, they don't really want to be touched. And it's supposed to be a very safe environment. So that was something that I think I just love the fact that that was even something that was available to really be able to create a safe space for students where they can come in. They, know that they're not going to be touched if they don't want to be touched. Certain, again, language you use, certain poses you put people in, like really deep hip openers and that kind of thing. Like, again, if someone has had sexual trauma in their history, you don't want to put people in big hip openers. It's a very vulnerable or even a heart opening position. Feels very vulnerable to those people. And so that was something that I used and then taught that at studios. And this was back when I lived in Texas, but I was at a studio that was also part of a counseling center. And she worked a lot with people that had some kind of trauma in their background. And so she wanted people that were very sensitive towards that and could create that safe environment. And that kind of, again, part of why I kept going with my certifications and that kind of thing is because of where I first started teaching, being a part of that counseling center and just seeing how much counseling and yoga and even health coaching can help people really develop that whole body wellness. And again, creating that safe environment for people to heal and restore their bodies and their health in a safe place. And so that's why I kept getting those certifications. And I taught at an eating disorder recovery clinic, the counseling center that dealt, like I said, with a lot with trauma. I've worked with people that have MS, Parkinson's, cancer recovery support group. Those kind of places have always been an outlet for yoga. And then I just wanted to be able to offer even more to my clients. So I went back and got my health coaching and life coaching dual certificate, and then have since then kind of niche down and work a lot with women that have disordered eating or maybe have come out of an eating disorder clinic, whether that be inpatient or just an outpatient program, and helping them re-engage back into the real world, because you are in a treatment center and it's a bubble. It's not that certainly things are not easy when you're in a treatment facility, but it is a very safe and structured environment, and you have lots of support and lots of people that are in your corner helping you get better. And then when you get out, while you might still be working with your therapist, going to them once a week for counseling, you may not have that same level of support that you did, and you are immediately bombarded with all the things that probably got you into that eating disorder place in the first place of, work stress, jobs, family, kids, relationships, romantic and otherwise, all of 2020, the dumpster fire that it was, all of that kind of stuff can really affect a person's well-being. So that's part of, and that's a need that I saw in myself and my own journey, having gotten out of an outpatient program, and then having to re-engage back into the real world and navigating all of these things. And I mean, even just like the Target dressing room, like no one wants to go bikini shopping underneath those fluorescent lights in a tiny little. So as a health coach, I can go bathing suit shopping with you if you really want to, if that's the level of support you need, or go on grocery store tours or meal planning, or do, your food Fridays together, or just do like the Enneagram, like maybe getting behind what makes you tick and, some of the, just a better self-understanding and that self-awareness to, again, help people on that health and wellness journey, whatever that looks like for them.
I love that.
The best version of themselves. Yeah.
That's amazing. So do you contribute to like really kind of going deep dive into all of this based off of your own experience of dealing with your own eating disorder, of just like, I need to help other people through this process? Yeah,
I think so. Absolutely. I think that just gave me a really deep empathy and sympathy towards people, because I honestly would not wish that on my worst enemy. Like it's a really all-consuming place to be in, where you feel like it affects all areas of your life. It's not like, oh, I'm just, I'm only feeling this eating disorder around meal times. I mean, it affects your ability to engage socially with people. You don't want to go out to eat. You don't want to have family events. You dread holidays because it always involves food. It affects the types of relationships you allow yourself to have, especially romantically, I think. You don't have high self-worth. So of course you're not going to be with someone who treats you well because you don't love yourself and treat yourself well. So it's a very all-consuming place to be in that really just robs people of their lives, of every bit of joy. And I know that sounds really kind of heavy and pretty dark, but I think that anybody who's probably in that place can really understand how all-encompassing being in a eating disorder or disordered eating type mindset or frame of mind, just how all-encompassing that is. And it just really kind of sucks the life out of people. And so I don't ever want everyone to have to go through that.
Yeah.
And so if I can help people and be the help and the light that I either wish I had or I did have through some friends and counselors and that kind of thing myself, then I'd absolutely want to pay that forward for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you're speaking my language here as somebody who said, or I guess would I say that I'm in recovery of binge eating disorder? If I'm not really going on binges anymore, I mean, I guess that's how I would frame it, right? Sure. Is that correct?
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah. I think that's the lingo. Yeah.
But like even going through that, and tell me if you relate to this, like even as I was binging so hard, I didn't connect the dots that I had an eating disorder. Like that to me, I just thought I just loved food. I didn't have control. I had no willpower. I had no motivation. Like that. Those are the stories I told myself. I didn't think about having an eating disorder at all until years later of working through that. And actually this podcast of having, talking to a guest, it's like, oh no, what you are doing is binge eating disorder. Of like, whoa, like do you talk to a lot of people in your practice that you don't even make that realization on their own?
Yeah, that's really insightful. Absolutely. I think a lot of people, like you said, they just think it's either maybe not necessarily normal, but like just not to that level of it's a disorder. And maybe it is just disordered eating, because there is kind of a difference between eating disorder and disordered eating. And I think so many people struggle with disordered eating. And just, again, if food or what you're going to eat or your diet or your body takes up a significant amount of time and brain space, I would say, then you might be tiptoeing into that disordered eating area. And I certainly get tons of people that like you said, I don't think they necessarily realize either the significance of it or the impact that it's having on their life and their overall well-being. Or they're stuck, like you said, in that shame and guilt cycle of like, oh, well, see, I just love Oreos. I can't control myself. It's like, no, it's not a lack of self-control, and there's nothing wrong with that person in particular. And I think that's honestly half the struggle, is getting clients to understand that like you are not the problem. The problem is the problem. And this is, something kind of almost separate from you. And
it feels like it's a symptom of something.
Yes, exactly. Oh, that's such a great way of putting it. It is. It's a symptom. It's a coping strategy, most likely.
Yes.
It's probably indicative of something else, some other imbalances that's going on in your life, and this is your way that you cope with it. You eat, and just like someone might reach to alcohol or drugs or something else. I mean, food is the same way, and it's much more accessible than any kind of drug or even alcohol for that matter. And it's easy to fall into that cycle, into that pattern. But yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. If it's probably a symptom of something, and that's why I love doing what I do, because I like to help people go, okay, these are all the symptoms, and that's awesome. But that doesn't mean that, again, there's anything wrong with you as a person. Symptoms are great messengers, and it's just like what do you do with those symptoms? Your body is asking you for help in some area, and so let's help find those imbalances or those habits maybe that aren't serving you, that are getting you into that place, so we can then break that pattern, so you can be back on your way to like a healthy, happy, fulfilled life, rather than spending so much time and energy worrying about what you're eating or feeling that out of control. I just plop down at night and I throw on Schitt's Creek and I binge watch and I binge eat while I'm binge watching, and those unhealthy patterns and cycles, and how do we get out of those, and what's really the underlying root cause of that behavior. So
how are you with your personal eating disorder now after being a coach for others? I mean, do you find that that's helpful, or how did you kind of, live through that?
So I think there's kind of two different camps. And even when you said earlier, like, do you say like I'm in recovery? And there are, and some people say, if you've had an eating disorder, you will never get beyond it, and you're always kind of in recovery. And I balk at that a little bit, to be honest with you. I think that there really is, it may always be like a weak spot, and I'm not naive enough to think that like, oh, well, just because this happened to me, it's been like 10 years now, 8 or 10 years or so since I've been out of treatment. I'm sure that that's a weak spot, and I do have to be aware of the fact that, if I get into a really high stress environment, or if there's a lot of, difficult things going on, then that may be something that I could resort back to, but it's not something that takes up really any of my time or thoughts other than working with clients. Obviously it's on my mind, but it's not a personal battle. I'm not white knuckling it anymore. Yes. I think is really the biggest thing there. And that's the hope that I want to give other people, is that this isn't something you're just going to have to live with the rest of your life and try and just manage the best you can and white knuckle your way through and just kind of grin and bear it, because there really are ways and tools. And it takes work. It's not easy, but there are ways that you can get beyond that. It just takes time, and it takes effort, and it takes a willingness to put in that work and grow on a personal level. But you can. There is another side to it.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. Before, I was binging, eating to the point of pain every night, and secret eating, and it was very shameful. But to like kind of work myself out of that, which I didn't go to treatment, which I probably definitely should have. But
she made it out. That's all that matters, Yeah.
So that's where I'm at. And it's something that does not cross my mind every day. Like before, it was just all day is thinking about how I'm going to eat, who's going to be around, or even going to friends' houses of like being obsessed with the food, not wanting them to watch me eat, waiting for them to leave the room, just thinking about it like constantly. Yeah. And, so those are things that I don't even think of anymore. And like you said, it's one of those things like 2020 was such a nightmare that it was sliding more into that's the comfort. That's my really old programming that is just deeply hardwired in me of like the coping mechanisms. But I've been through this so much and so long now, because it's been a decade for me of like knowing that's where I'm going. So it never ever got to any level where it used to be, but it's like, I can see where this path goes if I allow it to go there, and we're not going there. And so finding those, at least for me, I don't know if you recommend this in your practice of at least I do with like my own clients, of, having a list of those things that you can do for stress release and comfort that aren't food, of like, can you go for a walk? Can you drink a glass of cold water? Like, is there something else you can do that kind of, you enjoy, that kind of just slows the trigger for a second?
Yes.
Of read a book, whatever it is you need to do, march in place. Yeah.
And anything.
And those things for me are helpful. And that's where it's like, for me, even this isn't going into disordered eating, but I find, or at least I did in my old job, of like getting home, it's a stressful day. And then even though I would eat my dinner, I wouldn't be hungry, but I'd still want to sit there and snack, because I would associate that with comfort. Like that means we're relaxing now is eating. And I recognized I was doing that of like, no, what else can I do that feels relaxing, that's not just eating? And one of the things I found that I really enjoy, I just like taking like night showers. I like making, I have all my scrubs and all that other stuff of like, it's almost to like, no, this is how I relax. This is how I de-stress for the day. And I feel really good about this. My water bill does not, but
that's all right. So worthy sacrifice right there. Yeah.
And to me, that's a good stress reliever rather than sitting and mindlessly eating in front of the TV. And that's one of those things that making that transition is not easy. No. And it's not even easy coming to the realization of that. But like you said, you can absolutely work through those things. And I absolutely believe it's easier if you have somebody on your team and on your side that's helping you walk through those things rather than trying to figure it out on your own.
Yeah, exactly. And that's such a great way of putting it, of just, I think that's where that coaching role is so great, because we can be that buddy system and that encourager, and not just like in the way that, maybe your best friend would be, but it's like having a really knowledgeable best friend that has walked that path too and has a lot of tools. And what you mentioned about, finding those kind of replacement things, that's definitely something that I do with my clients. And we work at, I call it a personal nourishment menu. And it's like basically sitting down and thinking of all of those things that you can do instead. Because again, the idea isn't just to white knuckle it and be like, okay, I'm not going to binge. That's only going to get you so far. That might work for a night or two, maybe at best, but long term, that's not really a solution. So what can we replace that with, so that your brain isn't kind of freaking out and thinking, oh, it's in deprivation mode? We replace it with something Because so often, like you said, it's a comfort thing that people are seeking. So how to replace that feeling of comfort, and that need for comfort isn't bad. That desire and that need, that's human, and that's perfectly fine. We all need to find that. But doing it in a way that does not revolve around food or binge eating in that case is the key there, like you said. So finding things, and it's going to be different for everybody, but most of them, I'd say, generally speaking, fall on some kind of self-care, I'd say, list of, is that a bubble bath? Is that a shower? Like you said, again, everyone's water bill is going to shoot up, but it's fine. Bath bombs, maybe it's a walk. Maybe it's just sitting outside on your patio in a chair and breathing for a moment. Or yoga is another one that a lot of people like to do. Meditation, calling a friend. I mean, there's lots of different things. And it does, like you said, it does take effort. It's not going to be an overnight, like, oh, I'll just go for a walk instead of binging, and it's easy peasy. Like it's a process, and you have to allow yourself setbacks and mistakes, but realize that it's okay. It's still, you're still moving forward. It's progress, not perfection, right? So we're always trying to just move forward and finding those things. But after, in time, your brain will start to realize, oh, these things really are truly nourishing and comforting, because food and the binge, I mean, for a while it lights up that part in your brain where you're getting that reward and you're feeling great, but then there's like a really quick crash after that. Then the guilt and the shame and all of that sinks in. But if you go for a walk, or you don't have to shame shower, like, you're okay. You can shower and that's perfectly fine. So finding something that there's no guilt or shame associated with it, after a while, your brain relaxes, and that reward system is still getting something to have itself fed, but in a much healthier way. And it's kind of like a reset, like you're reprogramming your brain to find healthier alternatives to binge eating.
Yeah. So what role does taking like the Enneagram play into sifting through all of that?
I do. So one of the reasons why I love this so much is it just really, it gives people a deeper understanding of not only themselves, but just also how they interact with the world and what their needs are. And that's why I like the Enneagram versus like a Myers-Briggs or a DISC, which there's certainly a place for those as well. But with this one, the Enneagram, it talks about what your biggest, basically your core beliefs and what you really need in your life on a very, very deep level. And also just how you interact with other people, what you need from them as well. So it gives you that deeper understanding. And I mean, again, I'm really excited to talk to you about your results in that and your experience with it. But I feel like so oftentimes when I do go over it with clients, they look at it and they're like, oh, like that's why I do what I do, you get those, it's your core beliefs, your core fears, your core desires are all in there. And I think that that's what's really important to understand is especially the core fears, because to my knowledge, I don't think that like the Myers-Briggs and the DISC necessarily go into too much about like what really like is your main motivator at like a heart center or your fears. It kind of just talks more about personality and, here's some characteristics, good and bad, that you might have. And the Enneagram certainly touches on those as well. But it's, again, it's a little less core belief and core fear driven, because when those get hit on, that's when we react the way we do. And so my desire always with the Enneagram for my clients is just to give them a deeper self-understanding and self-awareness, and not maybe, and again, I know I mentioned this to you before we started, but talking about doing it with either at work. I know people have done it in their offices before. I've done it with couples where both of them have taken it, because then you can kind of better understand your partner or even your coworker or your boss of, oh, this is how we interact. And when you say this, that's how I'm interpreting that information, even though you said that. And you realize very quickly that you're talking pickles to each other. And so it just, gives you that deeper sense of awareness, which I think that, so much personal growth and all of that. Once we're aware of something, everything kind of changes. We can't fix things that we're not aware of, if this just, again, allows you that deeper self-understanding.
So when you saw the results of mine, what was your immediate reaction? Like, this chick's whack?
Not at all. It's like, oh, kindred spirit, because we're both 2s on the Enneagram. But it was interesting looking at yours, because you have a very high 2, a very high 3, and a very high 7. And most people, well, you're not just going to have one that super peaks and the other ones don't. But I've never seen one quite this far out. So you are a unique little precious flower. But
nice. So what does that mean? So how close is it from being a 2 to a different number then? Like, was it pretty dang close?
Yeah, your 2 and 3 are very close. But it's the fact that they're next to each other. Really, I think that you are probably mostly a 2. And I will let you speak to that because, again, that's one of those things of no one should say like, oh, I think you're this. Like you have to figure that out for yourself. And obviously, taking like the quiz or the exam that I gave you to take, that can give you a good idea. But if it doesn't resonate with you, it doesn't resonate with you. And that's what I always tell people too, of really you do know yourself the best. And, they always say, don't try and type someone. So, you need to figure out whether this feels like whether or not this resonates with you. But again, and not to get too deep into it too quickly, but since you're mainly a 2 and you're also a very high 3, in the Enneagram you have what's called wings, and so you can have it's always the ones that are next to you. So in your case, your 2 should be your 1 and your 3. If someone's a 6, it would be the 5 and the 7. So those are your the numbers directly on either side of you. And so I think you're probably mainly a 2. Again, just looking at the results, I'll let you speak to that in a second, but mainly a 2 with a very high 3 wing. And so those wings can kind of, you take on attributes of those wings. And so that's why some 2s may look a little different than other 2s, because if you're a 2 with a really high 1 wing, you may look a little different or interact in the world a little differently than a 2 with a really high 3 wing. So I'm just curious to see like what your experiance was. Did you read it and go, oh my gosh, yes, it's me?
Well, explain them to me real quick for everybody that's what the hell are they talking about?
That's right. I just assume everyone knows and I really shouldn't.
Because you said I'm a 2, 3, 7 are really high, right? So explain each one of those to me.
Okay. So the 2 is considered the helper, and it's the very it's the one that they just want to love and be loved. Like that is that is their main purpose in life, is to make others feel really loved. They can be very, very giving, very kind people for the most part, and then the 3 is a little more the achiever types. Like they want, they're very high driven. Which again, looking at that, I'm like, that kind of makes sense given like knowing your background and like you've been very professionally, very, very successful. So it made sense on paper. I was like, oh yeah, that she probably is a 3. So that's kind of the achiever. They're very driven, professionally or otherwise. And then the 7 is like the fun loving. They just want to go out and have fun. Like they just want to enjoy things in life. And, they're usually the very bubbly personality. So I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. You're very sweet. Yeah. You're very driven, but there's also that, again, that's probably why you may have been drawn to the profession that you were drawn to. Yeah. Because you do have that very, fun, exciting personality.
I've done a lot of weird stuff.
So
no, I would say that, that's awesome. Because I'd say that I'm probably a perfect mixture of those 3. That's where it's like, if you just said 2 alone, I would think that really describes me too. I really care about helping other people. I find value in helping other people. And I think that's completely accurate. But the other, I am a very high achiever to the detriment of perfectionism and things like that. I know they all have a dark side to them. And then, also very fun loving, like life is about experiences. Like let's get out and like live life to its fullest. So I think that those 3 are like great descriptors of who I would define myself as, and telling, for people listening to this podcast, I know Josh here at the gym, like we watch videos on my numbers and he's like, I think that accurately describes you. So I'm like, okay, at least I have outside feedback from someone that knows me very well to be like, yeah, that's right.
That's right. That checks
Instead of
out.
being like, yeah, I'm awesome, right? So what does that all mean then? Or I guess what's the dark side of those then? Or what's the flip side that would tell you something and how to coach someone?
Yeah. And that's the great, again, you always tee things up so perfectly, but yeah, that's because there's not like there's one personality that's better, than the other. They all have their strengths. They all have their weaknesses. And so with 2s, because, they're the helper, they're the loving ones, and it always sounds like, oh, so they're like the best ones on the Enneagram, right? Yeah, right. It's like, well, but there can be, like you said, there can be that side to them that we, and again, I say we because I'm a 2 as well, we can get a little butthurt when we're not acknowledged for our good deeds, or when we feel like we're being taken advantage of. And so if we're feeling undervalued or unappreciated, that's when that kind of, I don't know, like you said, maybe darker side comes out, or that just feelings of, again, being hurt.
Getting into the emotional side.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the emotional side. And
because I'm definitely like that too. Where I'm like, I do everything with the purpose of giving, and it really does give me great joy to do that. Yeah. But then, then you have your moments of like, well, I need this back too. And then when you don't, for me, then here, you could coach me a little bit a second on this, because then I go into I shouldn't have expectations of other people. Yes. And then it feels like I get hurt because I'm like, well, I'm putting an unfair expectation on someone else. Like, they didn't know I expected them to give me a gift because I gave them a gift, sort of thing. You know what I mean? And so then I'm like, well, I don't feel like my butthurtness is valid because that was me putting that on them.
Right. That was an unexpressed expectation. And that actually, it's really interesting that you said that, because that is also a definite trait of a 2, is we have a really hard time expressing our own needs, because either we don't want to put people out, and we don't want to, again, our whole purpose is to, love others and feel loved ourselves. And so it's like, oh, well, if I express needs, then is this person, is there going to be rejection? Like, are they not going to be able to meet those? Or am I going to be too much for them and then they're going to leave? So there's a lot of, I think that we hold back our own needs because we're so busy giving to others, but we also are afraid to express our own needs. Or sometimes, again, we're so busy giving to others, half the times I don't think we know what we need until, like you said, until sometimes you bump up to it and go, oh, well, I had this expectation. Maybe I didn't even realize that I had this expectation. I gave this person a gift. I kind of thought I was going to get one in return. I didn't. And now I'm upset about it. But it's like, maybe you either didn't express that to them, or your own brain didn't even express that to yourself, because you just were kind of, unaware of that was even a need of yours. And so again, that's where that coaching can come in and be helpful, but also just having that, again, deeper understanding of like, oh, okay, so as a 2, I have trouble saying no. I have trouble expressing my needs, and realizing that those core weaknesses of yours, and being able to grow into those areas. Because again, like I said, if you're not aware of something, you can't fix it. When you become more aware of things, and it's like, okay, well, now I know that I need to express this to people. My needs are very valid too, and it's okay to express those. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what are those sorts of, I don't want to say negative traits of the 3 and the 7?
Yeah. So the 7 can tend to numb out using fun and play, I think. So they can kind of go to that other side of maybe not addressing things or not getting serious when things need to be addressed because you don't really want to go there. So you avoidance. Avoidance.
I do that
too. So again, these are clearly resonating with you. Yeah. Just that kind of avoidance of, you know what, it's fine. Like, we probably need to have a conversation, but like, let's go watch a movie, or let's go get ice cream, or
no
like, let's
confrontation.
Exactly. No confrontation. Let's just keep it about, happy and that's their main driving force. So avoidance, I think, would probably be one of the main ones for a 7. And then a 3 being that like high achiever type, you can kind of set, I think, expectations, like you said, perfectionism for yourself and maybe even for others so high that it's unattainable, and then you disappoint yourself, or others disappoint you because you have high
100%.
Expectations.
Yes. These are all very accurate.
Checks out. Yeah. I mean, that's good. And that's why I love doing this, because again, like, just people go, oh, okay. So again, like, that's why I do what I do. Or as a coach too, from my end, I'm like, okay, so 2s are not really known for taking criticism very well. Like we kind of, it stings on a deep level. So as a coach, I'm like, I know not to approach someone who may be a 2 in the same way that I would be an 8, who's like the more powerful, I don't want to say the leader necessarily, because all of them have leadership traits, but just a little more, it's hard to hurt an 8's feelings. Let me put it that way. Yeah. So if someone comes in and needs coaching and they're an 8, I know I can be a little bit more tough love with them. Whereas if I did that to a 2, it'd probably be crippling. They'd probably never come back.
Yeah.
So
well, I mean, that
offers me some insight.
That's such helpful information, to have now, but like through my radio career, you're talking about being open to criticism. You're open to criticism from the entire public. Yeah. And then usually, working at a bunch of different places. For that, and no wonder I feel like I'm calloused over because I've been so wounded now knowing that I'm a 2, is because, when having that job, which is like me doing this podcast too, I'm like, I'm being me. Like, this is just me. This is my personality. Right. Yeah. And when and that's your job, and people criticize the work you're doing, that's pretty much criticizing me as a human and my personality. And like, hey, that sucked. That wasn't funny. You sound dumb. Like, all of these things. And it's just wounds. And it's one of those things of like, it destroys you, and you still have to like get past it. And then you just keep taking those bullets over and over again. So I'm like, oh yeah, no wonder so much of my career was so painful, because now knowing that that's who I am deep at the core, like no wonder that cuts so deep, because that's, if I would have had a thicker skin being in that, industry, that probably would have helped me a lot. And I worked with a lot of other people that were not afraid to just cut. You know what I mean? Because probably they have a different type, and they're just like, that's why I'm here, to be a bully.
You were probably working with a bunch of 8s. Is probably what you were doing. Yeah. It's interesting that you said that, because I actually thought that, because, I know we people on podcasts don't know that, but we met for coffee prior to sitting down to do this. And I remember you talking about your, radio career and how it was, a lot of criticism. And even just hearing you tell some of those stories, I felt myself like, I'm feeling anxiety. Like, it's not even directed at me. But again, as a fellow too, I'm like, no, you can't say those things to people. And it is. And so when I read this and saw that these were your results, I was like, man, I wonder how that affected you again, if that over time, that criticism. And like you said, it feels very, very personal, especially in that. It's not like, oh, I'm just hiding behind a work performance. It's like, no, this is your personality that you're putting out there on the radio. And if you're being criticized for that, that feels deeply personal. I think that would for anyone, honestly, but even more so probably for a 2. So it's interesting that you said that, because I was like, I wonder how that was interpreted.
Yeah. And I know you're not a psychologist, but I'll let you armchair give me therapy here. So, because that's also the way that like I was treated growing up. That's how I was treated by family. That's how I was like just a lot of criticism, not a lot of like love and snuggles. Yeah. And so, and also just me having kind of a brutal childhood growing up, kind of being, picked on and all of those things of like, I'm wondering if I chose a career in that because that felt familiar.
Interesting. Yeah.
So, I chose radio for a lot of other reasons, but I'm wondering if I've gravitated towards those types of things because I'm like, oh, I understand that. That's what I mean?
Your comfort zone in a weird way. You mean like you're comfortable being uncomfortable almost. Yeah. Like that's kind of how you just learned to operate in that space. You kind of kept seeking that out. But,
I will say on the flip side though, from at least, radio and podcasting, or I guess just putting it out there for the world, of where things can cut so deep, they can also be just so amazingly wonderful when you do get appreciation. Right. Again, of like the helper thing of like, I helped you. Like that is like the high is so high from knowing that you put something in the world that helps somebody else so they felt less pain, is almost worth the deep cut criticism, because it's like, oh, but that's so good. Yeah. I can get past the cut. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's definitely a trait of a 2. Yeah. Right. They're like, oh, I helped someone, so never mind. My personal, pain or whatever I had to go through was worth it because this person benefited from it, and you helped someone. And then in return also, like you said, that feels amazing when someone comes to you and is like, wow, you made a difference in my life. Especially, most people would respond to that, but especially as a 2, with that being like your core driver is, that just fills you up. You know what I mean? Like you can write on that for days when someone comes and says, you what you said on the podcast or what you said on the radio or whatever it was really helped me, and thank you. That just lights you up. That fills your little tank there. Your bucket gets real filled on that one. So.
Totally. Mm-hmm. So do you have any other analysis from everything I got? See. You have like a whole book of notes.
I know. I'm nerding out over here. I don't even know why. Like half this page is highlighted. Like, come on. Like at that point, just highlight the whole thing. Yeah. So as far as like 2s, again, to go a little deeper on, not that this needs to be a podcast all about 2s, but the core belief is if I can serve you, you will appreciate me. So that idea of, okay, again, you reap value from serving others and feeling appreciated, which is in itself not necessarily bad, but it can, again, when you're not getting those needs met from people, it can be very, very harmful. And so, I think it's important as a 2 to realize that like you can't outsource your happiness to other people, because if you put that on everyone else, then your happiness, your well-being, even your self-worth to some degree is dependent on other people's reactions towards you. Yes. And that's a dangerous spot to live in. Yeah. So you've got to find your value in serving people without expecting anything in return, as a 2. And so And that core fear is for a 2 is being unwanted and unworthy of being liked and appreciated. That just, like you said, that's to the core, right? Yes. So it's hard. And that fear of rejection. And in that sense, like props to you, girl, for going into a field where there was a lot of rejection and criticism, because lots of 2s will shy away from that because that is a place of vulnerability. And so it's just, choose something that's a little bit safer, you know, that where you're not going to put yourself up and set yourself up for that vulnerability. So
I'm a masochistic too.
Is that a special wing? Is there a masochism wing on here? I don't know. I didn't read that part, but yeah, maybe that's that 3 push, that again, that drive that wants to come out. That's a masochism wing. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, there might be something to it. But yeah, so we have, it's broken down into core beliefs, core fear, and core desire. And so for a 2, the core desire is to be loved unconditionally. And,
yes, I would agree with that.
So
I would really like that. That would be nice.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I think again, most people would probably want that, but it's so important as a 2 for that to just be like that. That's our happy place. Like that's just where we would like to live. And so, and 2s, I mean, as far as like the good things, I feel we kind of, harped on some of the, like, that 2s can take things very personally, but they are very altruistic. They're very relationship oriented. 2s can be incredibly intuitive. I mean, again, it makes sense why you do the podcast, because like you're very engaging and you ask really pertinent questions and you make people feel heard and feel seen. And I mean, those are some really amazing traits of a 2, and they can be very self-sacrificing as well, which again has a double-edged sword there. But there's a lot of really good sides to 2s as well, and they make great partners and parents and all that kind of thing because of that very loving, nurturing side that 2s have.
I was just waiting for you to talk about how awesome I am.
There we go. Should we just end on that note right there? Yeah.
But I can see though, like that's amazing, because it's stuff like that where you take a test where it almost feels like a generalized test or whatever, to be like, to get you so like correct, you know what I mean? Like, oh my God, like this is me. This makes so much sense. And I think that is so helpful to have, I mean, I read through the results and I understood it, but it's not like having this conversation about it, of like really kind of really understanding and talking it through, and then really applying that to everything you do in life and your behaviors. Because even just doing this in the past week has really like made me think about behaviors and what I really do need, because I don't express my needs and I really should work on that. And I even brought this up to my therapist that I took this test, and she's like, what are you? I'm like, 2. And she's like, So
it didn't surprise her either. Again, you're not allowed to type other people, but you kind of know if you're aware of the Enneagram. That's so funny. She's like, okay, yep,
which is, I mean, that's awesome. So I'm like, I think I'm going to get so much value from this, of just even understanding I should express myself more. I should explain what my needs are so I don't get so butthurt. Of like, if I just came out and be like, I need appreciation for this work, like I'm not, telling or demanding of you, but to know that that's where it's like when you get that fed, at least for me, of like having that, because I've had jobs where I wasn't appreciated, just to put this in a career sense, and jobs where I have been, and the ones where I have been appreciated, not that I need somebody to give me a pat on the back every day or give me a trophy every day, but that if you've been in a place, when you feel appreciated versus when you don't, then I am so much better at everything I do. It's just, it fuels me, and I will excel beyond my expectations because I feel appreciated. But when I'm not, it's kind of like, F this place.
Yeah, right. I'm out.
Right. And so I think it's so helpful to know that, even though, people listening to this are like, well, I'm not a 2, but it's like to know that about me. Definitely, it just makes so much sense, and being able to, I think, in the future, all of my relationships, work or otherwise, to be like, hey, I need this. Things will be better if this is just a core need of mine, and if we can't make this happen, then I'm not sure how well this is going to work out. And say that, and also take away the people pleasing of that, of knowing, expressing myself, and it doesn't work out doesn't mean I'm a terrible person.
Exactly.
It just means that that's not the right connection.
Yes. Oh, that's such a, on so many levels. There's so many things that I wanted to say in response to that. But yeah, I mean, I think for one, I love that resonated with you, and you're thinking about work and relationships and past and kind of filtering it through this lens. And I mean, that's exactly what I hope when I do this with my clients, of just, again, giving them that deeper awareness, not only of like, oh, okay, so my past kind of makes sense, but also just like you said, of now moving forward going, okay, it is okay to have needs. It's okay to express my needs. And it's also okay if those don't get met sometimes, but just being able to put that even out there in the first place to have enough awareness to know what it is. And like you said, maybe not everyone is a 2 that's listening to this podcast. I'm sure they're not, but everyone, no matter if you're, 1 through 9, whatever number you are going to have needs and you're going to have strengths and you're going to have weaknesses, and just being aware of those makes you a better partner, a better, coworker, a better boss. And that's why I think these are great to take individually, but also for couples or even, at a workplace, like as a boss, to understand like, okay, so I have like it's like, okay, I have a 2 on my staff. This is how she's motivated, So little bits of encouragement here though goes a really long way. And then like you said, you're going to get the most out of that person. Like, you don't need a gold star sticker, it's chart, you know what I mean? Like, but some just affirmation that like, hey, I see you, you're doing a great job. Thank you for all that you do and you bring to this team. Like you're going to soar probably for the next week and bring really quality work. So it's like, as a boss, if I had a staff under me, I would want everyone on my staff to take these so that I know how to better work with people, encourage them, because like you said, 2 is going to be very differently motivated than like a 6 or, however it is, but just having that deeper understanding, both work or romantically or even your friends, honestly, it's really helpful to know that. I think it's made me a better friend, a better, partner, a better mom probably for just having, and of course now I'm sitting here analyzing my daughter, trying to like, what are you? Like she's 6 years old. That's what she is. Like she has not developed her personality yet. So like I'm still trying to figure her out as well. Maybe someday she'll take a quiz too and figure that out. But, it just makes you more aware that's like, okay, I have these needs, but like you said, maybe not everyone has the same ones that I do, and you need to have understanding for the fact that you're going to bump up against people, and it doesn't necessarily mean that your way of viewing things is right and their way is wrong and vice versa. It just means that you guys have different core beliefs, different core values, different fears, and everyone always brings those things with them wherever they go. Yeah. And we have to learn how to interact with one another. And the only thing that can really do, if you take the time to sit with it and own your stuff, whether that's bad or good, is it's only going to benefit you, and it's only going to help you grow and be a better person and work more harmoniously with other people as well. You know?
I mean, I think understanding yourself, like there's no bad side to that. I mean, there's ugly parts you'd maybe not want to acknowledge, but you're not going to get any better.
But right? Like at the same time, like everyone has them. And again, that self-awareness, if nothing else is good, then you don't have to keep acting out of that place necessarily. You can do something about it then. If you don't like that necessarily those traits, then fix that, if you will. You know what I mean?
So if somebody wanted to come see you, and obviously the Enneagram is something you offer, and we're talking about the disordered eating, like what else would somebody come to you for? Like what other services do you offer if you think about a typical session with someone?
It kind of bounces. It depends. So I do offer a 90-day program. So it's 12 weeks. You come in and you meet with me for a 60-minute session over the course of 12 weeks, because I just feel like it takes that long generally to see those changes and be able to work, through some things. And it's kind of, there's a big span. I don't just work with people that have disordered eating. I think that definitely is something that I am drawn to, and vice versa. I think that people, once they find out what I do, come because of that. So it really, and because that's what people said, like, oh, you don't have it on your website as far as like what each, session is going to be. I'm like, because it changes depending on the person, maybe because of your Enneagram type, honestly, too. So that will be probably one of the things that we do earlier on so that I know how to structure that program. And it's always very client led. So we'll do the Enneagram. Maybe we'll look at the wheel of life and kind of figure out again where those imbalances are as far as, maybe you're really satisfied in your career, but your romantic relationships are suffering, or maybe vice versa, and so finding those areas of personal growth that we can find. And again, because that's so often, we look at health and we think exercise and we think, nutrition, and that's certainly an aspect, and I certainly can't help with both of those things. It oftentimes it's so much bigger than that. It's, it's also your mental health, your emotional well-being, and all of those things. And that's part of why I love the Enneagram, and just getting to work with clients on like mindfulness techniques, just finding those, we'll look at schedules. I mean, I know it sounds kind of silly, but I'll ask people like, what does your morning routine look like? What does your evening routine look like? What would you like for that to look like? And part of when they first come in is also projecting. It's like, okay, we're here now. We now have a baseline. This is our starting point. In 90 days, who do you want to be? And just like allowing that client to kind of dream and come up with things. It's like, okay, now we have the version of you that you want to be in 12 weeks time. So how do we get you there? And there's lots of different tools and techniques, and some of them may even involve yoga or mindfulness if people are dealing with a lot of stress and anxiety, of how can we maybe find a better evening wind down routine. Because again, it may seem very insignificant as to why is this lady asking me about my evening routine. It's like, well, are you doom scrolling through Instagram right before you fall asleep? Well, that's gonna heighten your anxiety. How much sleep are you even getting? And finding those little tweaks, maybe getting the TV out of the bedroom, like little tiny things that people do out of habits they don't even see. And that's really my biggest thing, is to come in and be like, hey, have you thought about this? Or can you get your partner on board here? Or can you, stop bringing foods in the house that, cause binges? Can you get a good support system behind you? Can we start unfollowing people on Instagram that make you feel like crap about yourself? We'll look at really that whole aspect of health and wellness and getting them to their goals. And some people come in with very specific, I want to, lose enough weight so I can get my knee surgery. I mean, that might be a very specific goal, or people just might come in and go, I'm just really unhappy and feeling very discontent in my life. I don't really know why. And please just help, just help me. And that's where I'll come in and again, try and look at those habits and routines, because your habits are leading you somewhere, whether you are aware of it or not. And so it's kind of like, are you setting those habits that are putting you on a trajectory that you want to be on, or are your habits shoving you along? Are you just kind of trailing behind them? And so, and there's this, saying in coaching as well, as tiny hinges swing big doors. And sometimes it's just like the little smallest adjustments that you can make in your day. And then before you know it, it kind of has that domino effect. And you're just living, again, a healthier, more fulfilled life and pursuing the things that you want to pursue and that make you happy.
So if you're not in Cincinnati, do you offer virtual coaching as well?
I do. Yes, I do, especially because of COVID. Thank you very much. Like that was kind of a necessary thing. So, and when I first started, I was actually out in Texas. So a lot of my clients were in Texas, Austin and Houston area. So yeah, I can absolutely do virtual, whether you're in Cincinnati or not, if you just prefer. And you don't have to do the whole 90-day program. Some people just come and they just want, a little insight, or maybe they just want the Enneagram coaching, just for a couple of sessions here or there. You can do maintenance sessions. I mean, I really want to meet people where they're at. And like I said at the beginning of the podcast, maybe that's going with someone who is out of a treatment center and they want to start eating out again, but they're really nervous. I will go eat with you. Like, I'll be your lunch buddy. I know that sounds strange, but like, sure, I'll meet you and I'll go be your lunch buddy. I went with another client. She had a trip and it had been a really long time since she had bought a swimsuit, and she was really nervous. And so I went to Athleta with her and was just like, we've got this. Let's try on some things. Let's keep you in a healthy mindset. Let's not let that disordered eating, just get that
triggered.
Exactly. Yeah. Get triggered again. So, I'm happy to meet you in the Athleta changing room under those bright lights if you need me to, I will meet people there with whatever they really need. So that's why I say it's always very client led and just trying to feel people out as to what their needs are and then stepping in that gap for them.
Awesome. So where do they find you at?
They can find me at, so my actual office is at Anchor Wellness in Kenwood, in that pretty shiny office building right behind the Cooper's Hawk there near the mall. So I'm located at Anchor Wellness. But they can book online through Anchor Wellness, or they can go to my website, abidehealthcoaching.com. So either of those places are the best way to find me. Instagram, you can certainly DM me as well, or that also has a link to my website, just Abide Health Coaching.
Awesome. Well, this has been amazing. I love the work that you're doing. And I hope that anybody that listened to this that found some value in this and was like, oh my gosh, like this could help a lot. They reach out and really kind of get the help that they need.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Amanda. You're awesome.
Thank you.
It's that two kindred spirit thing we got going on. But thank you so much. This was awesome. And I just love speaking with you.
Oh, you too. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
AmandaValentineBites.com